I want to tell you a secret about your ad server that's costing, I would wager, everyone in this room a significant amount of money, and I want to share with you a monetization strategy you can use to capture some of that lost opportunity. But first, I want to give Tom Shields a hard time. So last night when we were doing rehearsal for this event, I was coming up right as Tom was leaving, and his last question to Megan and Kat in our marketing and events team was, how do I get to this place tomorrow morning, right? Like, can I walk there? I'm going to come to the office first. And, if you guys don't know this about Tom, he's run marathons, he's done bike races, he's done a half Iron, but I mean, he's not a superhero, right? I mean, a 7th Avenue walk in New York City is kind of insanity. So my guess is that Tom, like a lot of you here, took a cab to get here today, right? And if you think about your taxi experience, what do, right? You get in the cab, you tell people where you want to go, and you pretty much sit back, check out, look at your phone, assume that cab takes the best optimal route, but you're not paying any attention to it, right? And really, that's a lot like how everyone typically runs their dynamic allocation strategy between programmatic and guaranteed, right? There's a feature in the ad server that they turn the feature on, and they essentially assume the feature works and makes them the most revenue possible. But are they involved? Do they check? What transparency do they have in, is the ad server actually doing that? They don't really have any, right? So, wouldn't there be a better approach? Well, sure, right? As smartphones were developed, you had GPS in your pocket now. You could define your own route. You could tell a taxi driver exactly the route you wanted to take. You didn't have to trust that they were taking you the right route. You could get a little more involved in that decision, and you could see, things like real-time traffic patterns and things of that nature. But it was still on you to dictate it, right? You had to sort of tell the driver manually what route to take, and maybe that would help you optimize your trip. And that's kind of where header bidding is today, right? You're getting more data, you've got more transparency, you can define your route, but it's more work. And even in the transportation industry, people like Uber saw these opportunities and say, hey, why don't we just give the GPS to the driver, right? Let the driver have all this additional information, transparency on traffic, things of that nature, and they'll be able to optimize their own route, right? Sounds like a great idea. Someone should work on the ad server that does that. I want to teach you today about how you can give your ad server the additional data you need to optimize your revenue. Because I would tell you right now that your ad server essentially acts like the taxi driver. It doesn't have all the data it needs, and it's doing a poor job or a non-optimal job in optimizing your revenue between programmatic and guaranteed. So what data are we going to use? What's the GPS of header bidding in this whole optimization strategy? Well, it's the bid data. It's the what would the exchange have bought. Not necessarily what they filled, but what they could have filled. And before header bidding, we didn't know what that was, right? With a waterfall, we weren't exposing all the inventory to the exchange. And even when we did expose the inventory to the exchange, we didn't get a per impression bid back, really. All that happened in the server with the exchange. So now with header bidding, we have that additional data, and we know what the exchange would buy. We know what each and every individual exchange would buy, and we can realize what our total opportunity is. We can measure what the total opportunity is for the first time. So with that data, we can make some optimization decisions. So I gave Tom a hard time. Now I'm going to give myself a hard time. So I have a confession to make. I'm completely addicted to coffee. I'm sure a lot of you have sucked down a few cups today. And typically my local coffee place is right on 23rd Street. It's Brooklyn Coffee Roasters. And I pretty much walk in there every day. I want a medium dark roast coffee. I'm not terribly picky about what I want. But there are some people who really are, and I will confess that I've explored the picky coffee drinker in myself, and haven't decided that I'm really in that group. But I once paid $12 for a cup of coffee that was Guatemalan, single origin, high altitude, sun-dried, siphon brewed. Those like siphon things that they have at Blue Bottle where it's like the light and the Japanese contraption and all that. So I didn't necessarily get the lemon curd notes, and I thought it was maybe not a great value. But the point is that there's a group of people out there, there's a segment of people out there who are Guatemalan, high-altitude, single-origin, sun-dried, siphon-brewed coffee intenders, right? And someone out there is, the Japanese siphon-brewed people of the world are willing to pay a lot of money to reach those people. And, those drinkers are willing to pay a massive premium on that very specific type of coffee. So it would be rather foolish, right, if Brooklyn Coffee Roasters, the place I go to every morning, decided to serve me that $12 coffee if I didn't ask for it, right? The price I'm willing to pay for coffee is, $2 or $3, right? It's good coffee, but it's not like super premium coffee. So the cafe is losing a lot of money if it decides to allocate off its scarcest resource, this super premium single origin stuff, to the people who just want a medium dark roast like me, right? So this scarcity allocation is really the piece that's broken in the ad server, right? Everyone thinks that dynamic allocation is perfectly allocating between programmatic and guaranteed opportunities, and in fact, it's not. So our lost opportunity here is if we decide that we're going to allocate this rare coffee to someone who didn't ask for it, and then we run out and we don't have any for the person who comes in and is willing to pay that massive premium, right? We essentially misallocated our inventory, and we lost money. So we want to get to this. We want to get to the perfect allocation. We want to allocate based on scarcity. We want to allocate the scarcest resource to the pickiest customers. So how do we do that, and why isn't the ad server doing that already? Well, because I think the ad server is essentially optimizing single impressions, right? It's trying to maximize your yield from a single impression, and it's not thinking about maximizing all of your impressions. And I know it seems a little non-intuitive, but if you had an opportunity between $1 and $10 on one impression, but then you had that same opportunity with a second impression where the dollar bid wasn't there, but you could still fulfill your $10 campaign, well, then it makes more sense for you to deliver the dollar campaign on that first impression, right? Because that maximizes your revenue. That helps you make $11 instead of 10, or it's not between 10 or 1. It's how do I make 11 instead of 10, right? So it's about total RPM and optimized allocation across all of your inventory and not just impression by impression by impression. And because most ad servers don't have great forecasting, they can't predict, will I have the inventory available to deliver this guaranteed opportunity in the future, and therefore can I take the programmatic opportunity I have in the hand right now? So we've done this analysis with a number of customers, and every single time we find huge opportunity. Every single time we find that the ad server could deliver far more programmatic bids than it currently is. It's consuming these header bidding opportunities with guaranteed campaigns, and it has the inventory to deliver those guaranteed campaigns on other inventory that the exchange won't buy. And in many cases, it's a really significant opportunity. It's between 20 and 40% for most publishers, and that's pretty huge. So you might ask, sounds pretty great. Why wouldn't you do this? Well, there's a few possible reasons. Reason one is it's more work, right? This is I'm going to give you a smartphone, put you in the back seat of a taxi cab, and you're going to dictate your route. That is more work than you tell me where, you tell the taxi driver where you want to go, and you sit back and you let it happen. So you're going to have to reprioritize some line items if you want to make this money. And a lot of you probably have thousands of line items in your system. Now, I would say that when we've done this analysis, we tend to find that 80% plus of the opportunity can be captured with a very small fraction of line items and reprioritizing those. You're also going to take on more risk, right? So there's going to be a higher chance that you underdeliver on your your guaranteed campaigns. So you're going to have to manage it more closely than you do today. My guess is that most of you have an at-risk management process and a campaign delivery management process today. So you're just going to have to run that more often, pay more attention to it. Now, when I gave the YieldX customer base a sneak preview of this presentation a few months ago at our client advisory board, because all this analysis was powered with YieldX Analytics, one of the questions or the pieces of feedback that I got was, hey, Ben, if we do this, though, and if we give programmatic first crack at the inventory, aren't we devaluing the inventory we're really selling to the guaranteed customer? And, I suppose you could make that case, but I suppose what I would say to that is, well, if you've got dynamic allocation on, though, you've already made the decision that you're willing to do that, right? Dynamic allocation by design is supposed to delay delivery of guaranteed campaigns in order to take programmatic opportunities. It's just that it's doing a bad job. So if you've already gotten on board with the idea that I'm going to allocate my inventory in an effective, efficient way between programmatic and guaranteed, don't you want it to operate in the optimal way? Don't you want it to make you as much money as possible? If not, if you're worried that programmatic is skimming the cream off the top of your inventory, maybe you shouldn't be doing dynamic allocation at all. But assuming that you are on board, then I think you'd want to optimize it. So what's your step-by-step playbook to do this? Well, first of all, you've got to be doing header bidding because that's the data that powers all this. You can't measure what your opportunity is unless you're in the game. So you've got to do that first. I think pretty much all the publishers in the room are doing that today, or they're close to doing it. You've got to have the analytical firepower to measure what that opportunity is so that you can figure out, well, is it worth my time and energy to do this analysis, to reprioritize these campaigns, to manage this risk more closely than I do today? And then, I think you've got to work with monetization experts that can help advise you and help you figure out, well, how do I do this in the lowest effort, lowest impact way possible so that I can make the vast majority of the revenue available to me without sinking tons and tons of time and effort into it. And hopefully, at the end of the day, we don't have to sit in the back seat of the taxi cab with our smartphone for too much longer, and we can just give the phone to the driver, and the ad server will improve its dynamic allocation logic. Someone should really work on that. Tom, we should really talk to Pat about that. All right, thanks, everyone.